I mean, the demo is not a murder mystery where there's a big reveal at the end, right? And the killer is.
Yeah. I know that you're drunk. Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist vlog. I'm Richard Simon, and in this second and final video, I'm continuing my interview with John Kerr from Mastering Technical Sales. I hope you enjoy it. What's the kind of advice that you would normally give to technical salespeople in terms of sort of how they conduct themselves, you know, with customers and so on?
Sure. I'll tell you a little story about the very first sales call I ever went on as a sales engineer. So at the point I was hired by this company, it's a company called Mathematica, and we sold a product called Ramis, which was a, quote, fourth generation reporting language. So you could generate fairly sophisticated business reports off anything. So I knew the product really well because I'd been a user, but had minimal sales experience. So I go on a call with the sales manager, and the customer's hammering me with questions, and I'm doing what I thought was an amazing demo. And we walk back out into the parking lot, and I look at Joel and say, "So how did that go?" And Joel, who's the sales manager, you know, he's like 15 years older than me at that point, kind of put his arm around me, kind of gave me that kind of your uncle look and said, "John, you have to remember, you're not paid by the word." And that is advice that has stuck with me for 36 years. So sales engineers are not paid by the word. You're not paid to be the smartest person in the room, even though you might be. You're certainly not paid to show and demonstrate that. What you are paid to do is to work with the rest of your sales team to uncover what the customer's pains are, to use that old-fashioned word, and then to go a step further and figure out what their gains are. So the fantastic things they'll be able to do once the pain immediately goes away, and then figure out how you can link your portfolio back to that and present it in the most compelling way. Right. And that fundamentally is what a sales engineer does. And so it's a mixture. It's no longer a requirement to have deep technical skills, and that's it. You need all these other consultative skills now that get layered on top of it that have become more and more of a requirement in the last decade. Yeah, especially in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I was going to come to that actually, but you've answered the question in terms of kind of, you know, whether you have to be really deeply technical, but it certainly is morphing, and you know those other aspects that you sort of mentioned are also certainly very you know, very important in terms of how you articulate yourself in front of customers.
Yeah, we actually have a little bit of data around that. So in conjunction with one of our customers and a consulting company, this year we redid a survey we did a few years ago, and we asked, I think, almost 2,300 mid to senior level executives, what are the skills that you value most in your pre-sale, in your vendors' pre-sales teams? Right? And we had to explain to a few of them what a pre-sales engineer was.
Yeah.
So the general explanation is, by the way, you know, once the salesperson is finished speaking, who do you look at in the room to see if they're nodding their head? Right, and whoever's nodding their head, that's the sales engineer. So we asked this question though, back to the survey of 2,300 plus mid to senior level execs all around the world in every single major market, I think except for China. And the number one skill was someone who understands my business. Number two was someone who designs innovative solutions with my staff. Number three is someone who can clearly and effectively communicate with me and my team. Number four is someone I can trust to do the right thing for me and my company, right? That trusted advisor thing. And number five was someone who has deep technical knowledge. So, you know, that came in significantly lower in terms of votes than the other four. So that means that deep technical skills are now, as I like to say, you know, table stakes, if you use poker terminology, and that's just what you have to have. And now these other skills, at least if you're dealing with, you know, people in the mid-level and above, that they want all these other consultative sales skills that necessarily weren't in demand 20 years ago. Yet the role of the rep has barely changed, right? They use technology a little bit more in their day-to-day job, but what a rep does is still the same as what a rep does 20 years ago. But what SEs do now is like much, much broader.
Yeah, I certainly agree that it is a evolving sort of role, and you do have kind of, it's actually quite good to be rounded in that way. I think I've found it certainly more beneficial to be able to do that. Because actually sometimes the issue is that if you actually are not like that, you might actually find yourself being thrusted into that sort of position where customers ask you to be that trusted advisor, or ask you to verify what they're thinking of in terms of the solution, the technical solution, as well as actually selling them the products that you've come in to sell them as well. So whether you actually have those skills or not, it'll probably get thrusted upon you at some point. So you might as well really kind of, round yourself a little bit more and have, those sort of other skills as well. Excellent. So, John, one of the areas I kind of really wanted to kind of move on to and cover was your sort of baked cake concept. Now, apart from making me probably want a slice of my favorite sponge cake or something, I just kind of wanted to focus a little bit more about it. So please explain what you mean by baked cake.
Okay. So Richard, if you think about what we talked about right at the start of this interview about being memorable, interesting, compelling, the baked cake is one of those little nuggets that comes out of a demo class, actually, about how to make your demo more memorable, interesting, compelling, right? Okay. And notice the acronym there, MIC, so you can drop the mic, right? So that's kind of how you remember it.
Yeah.
So here's what a baked cake is. If you think about a cooking show that you see on TV, and the chef is teaching you how to bake this amazing cake. So Richard, what's the very first thing that chef shows you?
The finished product.
Right. And why does the chef show you that finished product right up front?
I guess that's kind of the target. That's what you want to be aiming for, I suppose.
Yeah. So the idea is like, wow, I want to learn how to make that. I'm willing to invest the next 22 minutes of my time to see how it's done. Right? The chef doesn't start off with this massive list of ingredients, explain to you that you need these eggs that are from these hens on the southern side of the hill, kept in this kind of cage,
organic,
and the flour has to be sifted this way. Like people would just tune out, right? Yeah. So you show the baked cake up front, and what it does is it's known as like do the last thing first. So there's a guy out there called Peter Cohan, who has really a great book called Great Demo, who spends 180 pages detailing this concept. But if you show the customer the finished product first, then show the customer how you get there, and then finish up with that finished product again, you're far more likely to maintain their attention. Both the techies, because they want to see how it's done, and the business people, because you've showed them a result or an outcome up front, and then they want to learn, well, how do you get there? How are my people going to be able to do that? Okay. So that's the concept of the baked cake, and it's incredibly successful.
Okay.
To the point now where I have customers who talk about cupcakes and mini muffins and things like that when they're designing demo flows, because they want little cupcakes all over the place to get the customer's attention.
Excellent. So it's kind of it's sort of motivated the the technical salespeople to have that sort of focus on what they're trying to deliver, the end product of what they're trying to deliver. Is that right?
I mean, the demo is not a murder mystery where there's a big reveal at the end, right? And the killer is, you want to start with, and the killer is, and now you figure out, well, how did he or she actually accomplish the crime? So it's very different from what you normally see on TV or read in a book, because you want the customer to hang in there with you and justify emotionally why they're going to make an investment of time with you and hang with you to the end of the demo.
Sure. Excellent. Okay, John, so appreciate that. So I just kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the aspects of, when technical salespeople are actually engaging with customers, and maybe how that's actually changed a little bit with all the sort of the COVID crisis happening at the moment. And again, those types of sort of teams not being really able to be in front of their customer and in person. So one of the areas that I want to pick on specifically was kind of the whiteboarding, where in the past I could go in and present, and I could kind of sketch and whiteboard and do lots of kind of my solution architecture, sort of architecture boxes and so on. I'm obviously not able to do that, at least not in a very easy way anymore. So what sort of advice do you guys give to technical salespeople, and how that's actually changed under sort of the COVID conditions?
Sure. So most SEs were relatively comfortable delivering virtually, even pre-COVID. I have clients, particularly here in the US, who tell me that their enterprise SE teams probably did 40 to 50% of their customer interactions virtually.
Okay.
That number is probably 25% in EMEA and maybe 10% in APAC. So certainly cultural differences there.
Sure.
Obviously, come the middle of March, everything changed and almost everything went virtual. So that meant that actually vendors adapted to it faster than our customers did. And I think now our customers are caught up. So all those techniques that we learned in April, May, and June about how to give great virtual presentations, how to do correct lighting, which I've blown because of this Florida sunshine, which is still really strong, Richard.
It is very much, yeah.
This is what happened. Never move your desk like the day before an interview. So that's a lesson there.
Tested beforehand, John.
Yeah, I know. At 9:00 last night, it was great. So we've picked up all of these. What I did notice was, though, there was this default back to slides and back to demos. So as you said, the lost art of whiteboarding kind of disappeared when COVID started, which is strange because over the years, in fact, since I started up the company, our visual selling class, our whiteboarding class, has been one of the top 3 selling workshops every single quarter, like phenomenally well. I mean, we've probably, put 25,000 people through our whiteboarding classes at this point, not counting the videos. So then a number of clients came to us and said, hey, we need to do something different. And the premise behind it, Richard, is if you put your client's hat on, right? How many slides, whether they're PowerPoint or Google slides, do they see every month? The answer is too many, usually, but probably hundreds, if not thousands. How many of those are they going to remember? Maybe 3. What's the odds that one of those 3 slides is going to be yours?
Yeah.
So is there a different way to engage more viscerally with the customer? And the answer is yes, there is. So the art of virtual whiteboarding now has come very much back into vogue. And I think this coming quarter, so October, November, December, it'll be our number 1 or number 2 selling class.
Really? Okay.
So how weird is that?
Interesting.
So what it means is that you either have a touchscreen device like I have in front of me right now, or a tablet like my trusty iPad next to me, a good old-fashioned stylus, and you sketch things out for the customer.
Right.
Now, certain platforms lend themselves to this. So almost every platform now, a virtual delivery platform like Zoom or Teams, WebEx, has a built-in whiteboard, which is fairly rudimentary, but you can draw stuff. One of my favorite tricks in Zoom is if I have a PowerPoint slide up, I'll annotate on top of it and I'll draw goofy things. You can intentionally put a blank slide in and draw on top of that. Yep. But even more powerful is using a whiteboarding tool. So whether it's Microsoft Whiteboard, Google Jamboard, whatever it is, you can easily fire that up in a virtual session and then sketch something out for the customer. Yep. The advantage is, at its most basic, it's not a slide. And then also it's highly personal. So I can interact with you, Richard, and ask you questions and then sketch things out in a personalized way as I go along. And that does amazing things for the credibility of the sales engineer because it's something that's come from your head to your hand and onto the e-canvas rather than some product marketing geek in Sunnyvale building it. Apologies to people I know in product marketing. And it still encourages collaboration. So, in the before times, the customer would run up, grab a marker pen out of your hand and say, no, we do it this way. Right? That can still happen if you're doing e-whiteboarding and you just let the customer add to what you do.
Sure. And would you agree that the technology and the tools are keeping up with that? Or you think kind of they're slightly behind and maybe caught out because of all this COVID stuff? They weren't really sort of that sophisticated. Now they may be having to be more sophisticated or realizing that they have to be.
They are catching up pretty dramatically. So if you look at some of the standard tools out there, they've had a lot of functionality built into them now over the last 2 or 3 months. And vendors like Google, for example, Google Meet, 6 months ago, yeah, it was an okay tool. You know, the engineers have put a lot of work into it over the last 6 months. Jamboard, which is their whiteboard, is now integrated into it. Same with Microsoft Teams. You know, Zoom's done some really nice things as well. So the platforms got better as well as the tools that go behind it.
Right.
You know, but it still comes down to the basics, that if you can light up the textual side of the brain and the visual side of the brain, your customer is 4 times more likely to remember what it is. And wow, is that not a powerful advantage in a sales situation? And the instant you can have your customer say, oh, I see what you mean, like, you got the sale right there.
Yeah, indeed. And also, as you said, it's kind of more personal to them. Now, I wanted to kind of just move slightly to talking about demos, because that's obviously is a major part of, you know, kind of what a technical salesperson would do. So the first thing I was kind of probably going to ask was, are demos still relevant, or are they kind of overrated? A kind of quick yes or no. What's your kind of quick reaction to that?
So can I answer yes and yes? So yes, they are important, but yes, they are overrated.
Overrated, yeah. Okay.
I call it the dash to demo.
Right.
And if you work for a technical sales organization and you feel that you're a little bit of a demo monkey, and your job, your role is kind of reactive rather than proactive, is probably because you're doing the dash to demo or the push to presentation, right? So the demo is important. And for some companies, you know, their technology naturally lends itself to the demo, and it's kind of a proof point. You know, but it not necessarily the major part of the sale. And when I interact with clients, you know, and if they tell me, well, the very first thing I want to do is improve our demos, I'll say, well, okay, that might be true. However, let's do a little bit of discovery behind that and find out why. And often the reason the demos need improving is because the discovery that comes into the demo is poor.
Right.
You know, either the rep does it and doesn't do a great job, or the SE does it, but it's all technical and they can't link the technology up to the business. Then it's do you even need to do a demo? Now, sometimes you can do a short micro demo, and then maybe it's a little whiteboard. Sometimes you can just drive straight to a proof of concept. So yes, demos are important, not to the point where you need to be a demo monkey and it's the sole thing that drives a sale. And many reps, when they're struggling, will say, I'll show you a demo, you know, as if that's going to cure everything. And yes, sometimes it does, but more often it just digs you into a deeper hole. So I did some analysis, and this is getting on now, like 6 years ago when the 3rd edition of the book came out. And we looked at sales cycles for a number of our clients, and we figured that somewhere around 70% of demos were done too early in the sales cycle.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's quite a good, that's a big portion.
That is a big portion. Now, on the other hand, to be a little bit fair and balanced, you've got that Gartner report, or by the guys who did the Challenger sale, that says, you know, the number one thing customers want to see from a vendor is a demo. And so those seem incompatible. And when you dive down on that Gartner data, you know, frankly, they cherry picked a lot of it. And so when you look at it, it's not the number one thing that customers actually want. Customers want to be assured that you actually understand what it is they want to do. Then they want to see, well, how can you help me fix it?
Sure. Yeah. I think I would probably agree with that. I mean, it's certainly useful, integral, but it's not kind of the be all and end all. And there's other aspects that you still need to do. And as you said, kind of that, maybe that sort of more personalized approach is certainly a good thing. And what I've noticed recently is that a lot of people kind of, you know, maybe put up a couple of slides about what they're trying to talk about, and rather actually than doing a live demo sometimes, which can, you know, I've certainly seen it sort of, you know, fall over and fail sometimes, and that's kind of, you know, made it slightly awkward because obviously kind of, you know, you were relying on that sort of portion of your presentation or time with the customer to, you know, to do the demo, and now it's not working properly. So what I have seen some people do actually is do a video recording of it. So they play back the actual recording of the video, and then they just they kind of talk over it and kind of describe what's happening. And that's kind of maybe another way to kind of, you know, encapsulate something rather than kind of keeping it, you know, leaving it random. And I've seen sometimes when you're doing a demo, you've got it on rails, but actually the customer starts saying, going, oh, what does that button do? And if I choose this option of the menu, and then you're kind of going, well, okay, I'll show you very quickly. But then you kind of, eating into the demo time. So it's got to be kind of very tight, but it's also got to be, specific to the sort of thing that you're trying to deliver.
Yeah, I think so too. So we talk about a demo GPS roadmap where you tell the customer the map, the path that you're going to take as you show them the demo. And then also for those pre-recorded demos, I mean, that's part of the future of where we're going, which I think we're going to dip into in a couple of questions. But the low end part of our job is being automated.
Yeah.
That's just one example of how the low end, low value part of being an SE, the classic out of the box demo. If you can automate that, either let the customer drive it themselves or do the AI driven, robot part of it, then hey, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. So just to kind of maybe a final category to talk about, it's kind of a little bit about maybe doing a little bit of crystal ball gazing and kind of just looking at the future of the technical sales role. Where do you kind of see it evolving? And maybe because of obviously recent events with COVID, for example, how do you see it's kind of changed and how do you see it kind of evolving in the future? What sort of indicators are you getting when you're kind of delivering your courses?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great closing topic. So it kind of reminds me of a quote I saw from a Danish scientist whose name I can't even pronounce. And he said, prediction is so difficult, especially about the future. And that's kind of where we are right now. So I see a few things. So as I said, the low end part of the job role is being rapidly automated. So that's the low end demos, RFIs, RFPs, things like that. And that's phenomenal. And just take that off our plate is fantastic. So that lets us focus on some of the more high end things around complex interactions, around really interesting problem solving, and focusing more on the relationships that we have with our client and building that true trusted advisor status. Hand in hand with all those consultative skills that are now being required of the SE, the counterweight to that is that it's no longer the case that the SE just deals with the techies within the client, and it's the salespeople who deal with the mid to senior level management and the line of business people. Now the more progressive companies just look at who's in the best position to build that relationship. And it's not unusual to put, a 25-year-old, sales engineer, and she might be a subject matter expert on some little niche thing in front of a baby boomer CIO, because they're the two best people to, have that conversation and drive to a result. So it's more about skills and capabilities now than it is about job titles. So that's pretty phenomenal. In technology, a few interesting things. So AI is going to make a massive change to our roles. I have clients now who set up kind of automated proof of concepts, up there in Cloudland, and they have AI bots literally watching what their clients are doing as they're playing around in the sandbox.
Interesting.
And if the client starts to go off the rails, or there's a problem, or something out of the ordinary is happening, then those bots A, try and fix it, and then B, notify the SE that something's out of bounds.
Wow.
And you need to come look at it. So I think that's a fantastic use of
that is great.
AI.
Yeah.
And then just back to demos, demos are changing too. So there are companies starting to incorporate 3D stuff, virtual reality into their demos. You can just imagine the possibilities with that. And also companies that are starting to use holographic projections. So I had a client right before COVID who just took out this little box cube, and they visited the client and they powered it up, connected to the internet, and it was a holographic projector. I mean, it was almost out of Star Wars or Star Trek, and it projected this piece of hardware. And the engineers at the client side could walk around the hardware, see the exact size, check out all the ports and everything else.
So
like, wow, yeah, I mean, how amazing was that?
That's fantastic.
So there's things like that, and I talk about the 2024 sales engineer, but that could be 2022. I mean, it's happening now.
Yeah.
So
why couldn't we have the sorts of things when we were SEs, John?
Now I'm going to do the when I were a lad stuff. Yes. And 9-inch magnetic tapes. Yeah, okay.
I remember the floppy. No, that's not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, John, appreciate your time very much. It's been a great talk today, and I think, as you said, the role for technical sales is going to continue to evolve, especially with the last sort of maybe 10 years or so of the advent of cloud. Most recently, with the the changes around COVID and various other things like that. So, any kind of areas that, or any place that we can go? What's the name of your website, please?
Sure. So we have one of the longest URLs in the world. So we are www.masteringtechnicalsales.com. If you visit there, you get access to all the different resources. So there's tons of free material. Excellent. Over and above what's in the 3 books, also our curriculum, and then links to our sister company who does the deliveries over in APAC in the Asian languages.
Excellent, cool. And the books are, you said, from Amazon? Are they available
so the books you can get through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, local booksellers everywhere.
All the usual ones. Excellent. Okay, great. Again, thank you very much, John, for your time. It's been really fascinating talk, and maybe we can do a part 2 on maybe pick on something together, something kind of a pet peeve maybe next time or something like that for us. But I appreciate your time. Yeah, really cool having you on, and yeah, wish you guys much continued success. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching this talk. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. See you next time.